I'm back. You see where we at. You see what we doing. We definitely had to see what they talking about. I couldn't wait to see what JD Vance, you know what I mean? They put this basically the Lions Den. And I don't mean the lions with the mane. I mean the lions that go hunt and bring the food back and all that. So this is definitely a treat for me because I really like JD Vance. I think he handles himself very well. He articulates himself very well. And he communicates with the people way better than Donald Trump. So it's a difference. They're like I'm glad they actually are a team because they're like night and day. You feel what I'm saying? So he's very easy to listen to. So I definitely want to see him walk himself through these checks because already I ain't watch it. I heard about it, but I already know how these girls get, how these women get. So but I already know how he knows how to come across and how to communicate and things like that. So let's get into it. Let's see what they're talking about. Let's see how JD Vance handles himself. It's going to be a treat. That's how I feel.
For 29 seasons, this show has invited thousands of guests with all kinds of diverse points of view. And we have been asking our next guest to join us for a while now. So we're glad that he's taken us up on the offer today. Please welcome author of the new book, Communion, Finding My Way Back to Faith, the Vice President of the United States, JD Vance.
I was surprised at how tall you were. He's very tall.
Well, if you only see somebody on TV, you just see their, in my case, giant head. So
We all
it hides
have
how tall I am.
giant heads,
That's
yeah.
right.
We are the table of big heads here.
So this is a
Alyssa,
show of MAGA Republicans, right? That's
Yeah,
what my
right,
media
yes.
team told me? Okay, good.
well, we'll find out. Huh? I think you have the first question, Alyssa.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us. Now, you came into office with clear momentum, but when I talked to my friends and family who supported you and the president and still support you and the president, one issue comes up time and time again, and it's the economy. Inflation's up, wages are down, gas prices are starting to drop at news of this Iran deal, which we will get to.
Sure.
What can you say to voters who trusted you to lower costs on day one, and will they be satisfied by November?
Well, I think that's ultimately up to the voters, right? I think voters have every right to expect as much as possible out of their elected representatives. We certainly know that we were elected on a number of mandates. One was to close the border, which I think we've done successfully, exceeded expectations there. Number two was to lower prices, and there's a lot of work to do, in large part because of what's happened over the last few months in the Middle East. But as you said, oil, which got up to $120 a barrel, now is at $80 a barrel. That's going to be reflected in lower fuel, lower food, lower energy prices. But there's a lot more work to do. The thing that I'm proudest about most, because as some of you may know, I grew up in one of these towns that was forgotten by the leaders in Washington of both parties, is that you're seeing, that's Middletown, Ohio. That's my hometown in southwestern Ohio. It was a proud steel town. I was raised by a grandfather who was a union steel worker, is that those jobs disappeared. Those factories closed down. The thing that I'm most excited about is you do see a large amount of capital investment coming into our country. Factories being built, construction jobs are way up, manufacturing jobs are starting to catch up. So there's a lot more work to do. I think that we're making progress, but ultimately we're going to make our pitch to the voters in November, and they're the ones who get to decide whether we've done a good job or not, and that's how they're going to vote.
Okay. So President Trump has called affordability a hoax. He said that, not me. He's pouring money into this ballroom of his and the reflecting pool. Oh, don't forget the Arch de Trumpe, I call it, and a White House cage match. All these things. Why is he doing them when you just, everybody knows that Americans are struggling? What is he spending all this money for?
Well, I got to defend the.
Listen, man. All my life, I'm 1982. Americans always been struggling, and they always will be struggling. This narrative of this is America and things should just fall in your lap, never was true. Ever. And I don't know, what are they going to say when Donald Trump is not there? I don't understand. The country didn't change because Donald Trump got into politics. Like, it's always been hard for people. For 99% of the people, you have to work hard, period. I don't understand. Everybody's not part of the 1%. Everybody ain't never been part of the 1%. You have to get it out the mud. And this narrative that they're talking about, how things should just be easy and it should just happen for you. Yo, it's always been like this. When I was in my 20s, the stat of 90% of people who got degrees never was working in the field that they got their degrees in. You got to figure this thing out. And I'm black, so black people always had to hustle and go hard. But now, all of a sudden, the white tea people feel like it's a little bit harder for them now. It should be easier. No, it should not be. If you're not part of the 1%, you got to go work for it. I remember everybody worked hard. It didn't matter what color you was. You had to work hard. If you opened a business, if you had a job, if you had a career, you had to be the best. You had to compete. That's America. America is the land of opportunity, but you have to compete for them opportunities. This is real. This is real life. This is not a movie, and I don't understand why now in my life I'm 40, about to be 44 years old, and I'm hearing all these people that used to work hard acting like people didn't, like it should just be easy. It's not easy. You got to get up every day and put your work in if you want a better tomorrow.
President, on the hoax point, what the president said is the idea that Republicans caused the affordability problem is a hoax. And I think that's true. If you go back to the Biden administration, inflation got up to 9% under the Biden administration. Okay. Right now it's at 3.5%. By the way, too high. We're doing everything that we can to bring it back down to 2.5%, which is where most people would like to see it. But we inherited an affordability problem. We're doing a lot to make it better. It's going to take a little bit of time. There's a lot more work to do. But the president knows that a lot of Americans are struggling. In fact, he ran on that. He talked about it. And we've done some things and made some good progress on that point.
He just said he loves the inflation.
What he said, Anna, what he said is that he loves the fact that the inflation is going to come down when this war is over. That's what he said.
That's not what he said.
That wasn't a direct.
Are you his interpreter or are you his vice president? Come on.
Well, look. What the president said. People were asking about the inflation. They were asking about the affordability problem, which again is very real. And what he said is, "I love the
inflation going up 1%, and y'all choking." Y'all didn't say nothing about y'all ain't say nothing about inflation when fucking Biden was in power and it was at 9%. Y'all act like it was normal. There's nothing going on. Now inflation went up 1% because they didn't want Iran to have a nuclear bomb, bombed them for 3 months. Now all of a sudden, oh my God, the inflation is up. And he did do something about the inflation. Before the war, when he got in office, go back a couple of months before the Iran incident, and the whole time he got elected, inflation was in 2%. It was under 3%. These are facts. So now a president got to make a hard decision, make a move, and be a president, and it goes up 1%, and these cackling hens are acting like, oh my God, what is he doing? He's being the president. It ain't at 4%, it ain't at 5%, it ain't at 6%. It was all the way at 9%. Last week, gas was the price of a barrel was $120. Now it's down to 80. It's probably down to 70 something dollars right now. Everything that they say, it one day is this, they'll talk about it for a month and then it won't be like that. It won't even be like that the next day, but they'll talk about it forever. It don't matter what this administration does. they're going to talk bad about it because they have nothing else to talk about.
Inflation because it's going to come down when the war is over. And now, again, we already see gas prices today, $4.06 a gallon, too high, but way down from where they were just a couple of weeks ago. So there's a lot we got to do, but I think that we're doing as much as we can. We're going to keep on working at it. And again, the American people are going to make their verdict, but I think that we have a very credible case to run on, that we brought a lot of new investment. We're building the factories. That is going to pay serious dividends for the American people over the long haul.
When?
Well, Joy, if you look at manufacturing jobs,
Yeah, okay.
those jobs are increasing at a large number. Construction jobs are doing a little bit better. So what happens is the construction jobs to build the factories, and then the manufacturing workers go back to work. That also leads to rising wages. That's one of the things that I'm very proud of, is if you look at the amount that wages are going up now compared to, say, 2022, they're going up way faster. That's a good thing. You know, the affordability problem, again, gas, way too high right now. Certain things way too high. You know, rents have been either flat or down for 12 months now. So there are things that are showing signs of life, things that are showing signs of progress.
And remember, it doesn't matter what he says. They just want him to be wrong. They don't want him to be right. Everything that he's saying is good news. It's good news. Wages are going up. Inflation only went up 1% for 90 days. 90 days. It was only 3 months. And then watch by time November come, and then wages is going to be, the inflation is probably going to be down less than 2%. The stock market is at all-time highs. It don't matter what they do. They're looking at everything. Everything's bad. So it's like, come on now.
My view, I'm sure you guys don't agree with it, is that we inherited a mess and we're fixing it. But sometimes it takes a long time to fix a mess.
Sonny.
Okay. Mr. Vice President, according to a new report from the New York Times, you were the leading voice behind the scenes to release the Epstein files, and we applaud you for that. And you warned top officials, including top DOJ officials, at strategy meetings taking place inside the Situation Room. We understand that there are tapes of those meetings, that this was a huge problem for the base. The report says you even floated having Tucker Carlson interview Ghislaine Maxwell to clear the president's name, but you were rebuffed by your people. Why?
Well, I'd say, first of all, don't believe everything that you read in any newspaper, whether it's a right-leaning paper or a left-leaning paper, because as you guys know, well, there are things that are true, things that are false, and things that are totally missing context. Well, here's what I'll say. So, number one, I am frankly kind of a conspiracy theory on the Epstein stuff, and that story says that that's one of the things that's true, is that some people called me a conspiracy theory on the Epstein stuff.
Called you a conspiracy
and I love Susie, but absolutely, she thinks I'm a conspiracy theorist on the Epstein stuff, because I think that it's crazy that you had this guy who is clearly a sex predator who is hanging out with a lot of very wealthy and powerful people. Like, that really bothered me.
A lot of wealthy Democrats. That's what they want. They want to bring up Epstein, but they don't want to bring up all. Epstein didn't hang out with Republicans. Republicans was not in them files. What was in the files of emails of Epstein hating Trump and Trump snitching on him and turning him into authorities. Yes, they had a friendship before. Just like a lot of people have friendships before. But once you find out that your friend is a bad person, or your friend is trying to set you up, that's what Epstein was trying to do, trying to set him up, get him in this blackmail ring. He disses himself, kicked him out of his club, and sent the authorities, sent them people on him. This is what really happened.
I don't know what's there, of course. Nobody knows exactly what happened unless you were there, but that really bothered me, and I wanted to have full transparency. What I disagree with is the idea that the White House wasn't committed to full transparency. We have to remember, like, I was inside the room when some of these decisions were made. The Epstein Files Transparency Act, the one that the president signed, the one that led to all these files that we're seeing, the emails. By the way, again, sorry, Joe, I do have to defend my boss. I know you guys don't always appreciate this, but, you know, one of the things you see in the Epstein emails is that Jeffrey Epstein hated Donald Trump. and that Donald Trump literally reported Jeffrey Epstein to the police. That's one of the things that came out of these files.
They were best friends for about a decade. And remember, he signed that Transparency Act under duress when some Republican women, congresswomen like Lauren Boebert, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, did not give in to his pressure of not signing. He brought Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room to pressure her into caving on not voting for that bill.
That's not true.
So let me respond to that. So
That's all true.
Let me respond to that. So number one is, yes, Donald Trump, and he said this, he knew Jeffrey Epstein back in the 1980s. He also threw Jeffrey Epstein out of his club when he found out he was a creep and reported him to the police. That's something that the media often misses when it reports the story. They tell the fact that they knew each other in the 80s, which the president himself admits. They ignore the fact that he narked on him to the police and led ultimately to JeffreyEpstein's downfall. To that point, Anna, you know the Republican Party. Well, it's one of the things that led to law enforcement investigation. But on the point that you made,
it was allegedly over a real estate deal that they got into a fight.
Can he talk? Can he answer the questions? This is called a bad faith conversation.
Over.
But the email says actually
they didn't just know each other. Let's just be truthful and transparent here.
He didn't say they didn't know each other. He said they was friends. It was said that he just said his exact words was, yes, Donald Trump admits that they was friends. He didn't say Donald Trump admitted that they know each other. He just said Donald Trump admitted and said they was friends and then narked on him. That's what he just said. They don't like what he's saying, so they're trying to change the narrative.
They didn't just know each other.
He's in a lot of
they were
pictures.
incredibly close friends.
He reported him to the police. That's what I'm saying. That is objective. That is objectively true. But Anna made another point that I think I would be if I may, because Anna made a very important point. This question about did Donald Trump release these files only under duress from Republicans? And Anna, you know the Republican Party probably better than I do. The idea that Donald Trump runs around afraid of Republican congressmen as opposed to the other way around is kind of crazy.
What was the bipartisan? It was Republicans and Democrats.
But because the Republicans control the House and the Senate, particularly the Senate, you need the Republican sign-off. What the president did is, look, I will say this. Again, I was in there in the meetings. He was very frustrated that the Democrats were making this about him when he's like, look, I threw the guy out of my club. I am the guy who reported him to the police, or one of the people who reported him to the police. The president was frustrated about that, absolutely. But he eventually came to say, you know what? Let's just get everything out there. Let's have this out in the public. And he actually called the senators. I was there. He called the senators and said, you know what? Pass this bill, I'll sign it, and that was it.
Well, then let me follow up briefly. Let me follow up briefly.
Yes.
It sounds like you believed that there would be men in the files who would be held accountable, rightfully so. And the American people are with you on this. Why haven't we seen the release of over 2.5 million additional Epstein file documents? It seems like you are someone that is on the right side of history on this.
So we have released, I think it's 6 million files or 6 million pages of documents. My understanding is the 2.5 million, Sonny, I'm going to check on this to make sure, but my understanding is that a lot of those are duplicates of things that have already been released.
So
we're not holding anything back. Some of those things are like the courts have to order you to release them. So that was one thing that we confronted. You talk about these situation room meetings is, you know, there's a big bunch of files that existed, I think in the Southern District of New York, or maybe it was some other jurisdiction, but we were like, we want to release these files, but you need the court approval in order to release the files. Sometimes we would apply to release the files and the courts would say no. So those particular documents, I would need to actually know exactly what you're talking about.
3.5 million documents were released, and my understanding is 2.5 million have not been released.
Those may have been the ones that are under court. So I don't.
He's answering your question. He's in the room. You don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what the documents you're talking about, but I'm telling you,
let me go to break.
Sure.
Let me go to break.
Mr. Vice President, in your new book, Communion, you write about your personal evolution with faith from evangelical to atheist to Catholic convert. And you also explain your evolution similarly on Trump, from calling him America's Hitler to America's best hope. Now, as someone who has admitted to chasing ambition, which you write about in the book in the past, but now says your faith brought you back to your priorities, I have to kind of use your own words that sit with me from 2016.
Sure.
Fellow Christians, everyone is watching when we apologize for this man. Lord help us. And I think about that all the time because as a fellow Christian, that is something that weighs on my heart as I watch this country and the leadership at the top, because it's also something I have to explain to my kids, which I know we also share, this idea that our greatest privilege and responsibility are these young people we're raising.
Of course.
So help me find the words to explain to my children what they're witnessing right now.
Well, you know, first of all, it's been well covered that I was a critic of Donald Trump back in 2015 and 2016. Now, obviously, I'm sitting here as the Vice President of the United States in the Trump administration. Well, Joy, a little humility, actually. I think that when you make predictions and those predictions turn out to be false, you got to ask yourself, well, what made me wrong about that? What did I not understand or not appreciate? For example, I said that Donald Trump's economic policies would not lead to wage growth. They did in the first term. That was actually a major, major thing. I said that we couldn't bring back any of those factory jobs because I kind of had given into this idea that those jobs were disappearing. But actually, Donald Trump, you saw a manufacturing boom during that administration. So there's a certain point. Let me just. So there's a certain point where you say, you know, I made predictions about this. I ended up being wrong. Yeah. And in politics and anything, I think it's important to just say, you know what, I got some things wrong. And I was wrong about him. He was a very successful president. It's one of the reasons why I've been so supportive of him.
But you go on in the book to explain that good policy was maybe one of your justifications. But the quote, and when you tweeted that or X'd it, was not about policy. It was what Christians were willing to excuse. And that's the part I can't get past. What are you willing to excuse in the name of power?
Well, I would say fundamentally that one of the things I underappreciated about Donald Trump is that so many of the things that people said about him weren't actually true. Again, you talk about humility. Okay, so I see Donald Trump, I see a clip of him, or I see not even a clip of him, but reporting about something that he said, and I take it at face value. For example, let's just go back to one of the most controversial things Donald Trump said during the first term that I was wrong during the first campaign, is that I was led to believe by the stories. I read stories that said Donald Trump said that all Mexicans were rapists. He never said that. What he said is that the certain South American countries, Central American countries, were releasing criminals into our country, including Mexico. By the way, that was objectively true. So it's not so much Christians.
Fidel Castro did that in 1980 with the Mariel boat lift. There have been many, many journalists, including CNN, where you used to work and be my colleague, that have tried to find evidence of that. There is no evidence that Maduro was releasing people from insane asylums or jails like Fidel Castro did do. This was made up, and we just can't, accept it without pushing back.
Anna, we know that there were people who were released from prisons who were encouraged to come into the United States.
It wasn't the Mariel, Mr. Vice President. It wasn't where it was like a purposeful release, open up the jails, open up the...
Lady, you're wrong. You're wrong. Yes, it is true. You don't want to believe it. You're biased.
Insane asylums and let people flood Florida. I lived through that in Miami.
If you go, it may not have been like Mariel, but if you go back to the caravans that were happening in 22, 23, we know that those things were funded. They were in some ways supported by the government.
There was absolutely...
So I don't know how you define support or not support, but if people are encouraged to come into our country after having spent time in prison by their own governments, I think that's a problem.
But, Vice President, can I just add one more thing? Because you do speak about immigration at length in this book.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And I believe, as a Christian, I can tell my kids why it's important to have borders. I get that. There are laws, there are resources. I get all that things. It's much harder to explain when I see someone dragged out of a house or wrongly taken to a thing that isn't a violent criminal. It's a little more nuanced as a parent to try to say when someone's...
Jesus said, follow the laws of the land. That's a fact. You follow the laws of the land. Period. It ain't about cherry picking the laws. You have to follow the laws. These people want to cherry pick the laws. You break the law, it's consequences. People are coming to get you and bring you back to your country. Just like if you're American and you take yourself to another country, they're gonna lock you up. And if you fight, they're going to drag you and lock you up anyway.
Referred to as vermin or scum when I teach them in school about people that have done that before. But this is different. It's very hard as a parent and a Christian to say both things.
And you actually say in the book, you talk about this, struggle, this internal struggle in the book, and you talk about moral trade-offs that result in favoring a strict migration policy without dehumanizing anyone. But listen, over 50 people have died in ICE custody. There are thousands of children, 6,200, that are being held.
Over 1,300 Americans have been killed because of illegal immigrants. By the hands of illegal immigrants, over 1,300 Americans have lost their lives, and they're talking about 50 immigrants. We don't know. We don't know. It wasn't 50 immigrants that passed away by being murdered by ICE. We don't know why they passed away, but we know that over 1,300 Americans have been murdered by the hands of illegals. These people are crazy the way they talk. It really makes me mad. 50 people to 100, 50 people to over 1,300 people, Americans. Are you serious? You want to bring up 50 illegals that lost their lives, and we don't know how they lost their lives, but we know that over 1,300 Americans have been murdered because of illegals.
Held in places like Dilley Detention Center. The people that have visited those detention centers, I don't know if you have, talk about the subhuman, infrahuman conditions, the lack of clean water, the lack of medical attention, the lack of education.
Lies.
I would urge you as a Christian and as a father to visit those detention centers where the children are being held and make sure that the conditions are up to the values that we hold in this country.
Every time I see video of them places, they look better than the prisons that Americans are in. They look 10 times better than the prisons that Americans are in. I don't want to hear that from this lady. This lady is getting on my last nerve, I swear to God.
You guys have thrown a lot at me, and I see we got 30 seconds left here. But let me say,
You're
number
the
one,
Vice President. You can go long.
I'd like to pick up on this theme because I think it's really important. We do have to strike a balance, of course, between enforcing our laws. We don't want to dehumanize people. That is the balance that, look, law enforcement, what I'd say about this, law enforcement is always inherently not a very pretty process, especially when you're dealing sometimes with violent people, with people who are resisting arrest. Some of the people that I've been told by the media were completely peaceful, had never violated any laws. You actually look into the record and you find out that those people were actually being violent, or they did have a criminal record. They had a sex trafficking conviction.
Don't have criminal records. The majority of people that ICE is rounding up and taking out of their homes from their families, they're separating families. They're using children as bait.
Soon as you come over here, you're a criminal because you broke the law. You can't cherry pick the law and be like, oh, just violent. No, you're a criminal. You broke a federal statute by crossing the border. You are a criminal.
But
The majority are not criminals.
But can I respond to that?
They're all criminals.
Okay. So you talk about the children. Here's what I'd say. Do we know that during the last administration, we had tens of thousands of children who were sex trafficked by the cartels, who were brought into our country in profoundly dangerous and predatory conditions?
Let's talk about this administration.
But here's the point. Unless you enforce the border, you invite that kind of conduct. You think that our immigration policies are inhumane based on the reporting of one person with a political bias. What I'm telling you is that it's inhumane to allow cartels to sex traffic people across our border.
And
by the way,
Please hold on.
I appreciate that.
Because yesterday, you know who announced his choice.